Hi, this is Susan Fine, and this is a session on generating, gathering, and interpreting data using Canvas.
So, how many of you have read or seen Moneyball, the Michael Lewis book that got made into the movie? Recruiting, rethinking how they in fact get players, right? And think about players. All right, great.
It all statistically.
Exactly. Okay, so you'll be building spreadsheets and writing code just like that when you use analytics. No, I'm kidding. Actually, Canvas is going to do a lot of things for you. So the point in showing you that, it was very much what Jim was talking about in terms of a shift that went on, and then Mike very nicely said it was about using statistics. And again, Canvas analytics, they'll let you do a lot of things. It won't quite be at that level, but the big thing that stood out for me when I thought about this presentation and I thought about Moneyball, Moneyball marked a cultural shift. It was the movement from kind of instinct to leveraging data, although I think it's only fair to say that statistics were used in baseball for a very long time. I think Moneyball shifted things in a big way, but it wasn't as though people didn't use data before and weren't interested in it. But leveraging data to make decisions and to understand players. A similar kind of change has happened in education, and I think it varies a lot across schools in terms of how data gets used, and I think independent schools have been fortunate in that there are a lot more choices about what you want to do, and some schools do use data, I think, like with standardized test data and that sort of thing, and other schools don't. But in an online classroom, you no longer have the kids show up in the morning and you can take attendance and you can see who's on time and who came with the materials and all of that. So you're going to have a set of tools to know what people are doing, to take the pulse of your classroom, and the analytics are going to be a very useful way to do that. Okay, what are analytics and why use them? I think this point is one that I feel very, very strongly about. Data is only as good as the human analysis of it, and data plus the analysis are what we call analytics. And I cannot say enough, like how you interact with that data and how you make meaning of it, that's where it's going to be significant to you. The information alone is pretty meaningless. So that's a critical point. And then I wanted to point out, just as in baseball, they're called sabermetrics. I learned that in researching this. They've long existed. You have also used data for years, and maybe you do think about it as data, but some teachers, I think, don't, like the word data suddenly makes it feel different from what they're doing, but there's all kinds of things that you do all the time. Taking the attendance, making observations about the students, grading their work, of course, and some of it is very quantitative and some of it's quite qualitative, right? Now again, you need online equivalents for all the stuff that you do in the brick and mortar setting, and we're going to talk about that. And then I think this point is a really interesting one. There are unique opportunities in a learning management system because you are capturing information in one place. Just as you use all this data all the time in your classroom, you don't necessarily have it all housed in one place. Whereas Canvas, I think of Canvas as a community center, and it does a whole lot of different things, but one thing is it records what's going on there. So it's all living in there and it's all there for you. But again, all of that's only going to be as good as what you do with it and how you think about it. So let's move to kind of the equivalence, brick and mortar, online equivalence. This is not comprehensive. It's not everything, but it's a beginning point for you to think about, okay, attendance. Did students show up? I would think, does everyone here take attendance every day? Is that part of what you're expected to do? That there's some way in which the school documents who shows up, who's where at what point, are they late? In schools also there are kids who are chronically late, so you keep records of that stuff. I worked in a school where we noticed we always had certain people absent whenever we had major assignments going on, like whenever there were certain kids, and so we started to really track that because we were like, hey, so-and-so is always gone when there's a major test. And actually what was interesting is the other kids ratted these kids out. They're like, he's always gone when, So anyway, but we started to actually get more intentional about our data because there were certain patterns that seemed not to be terribly helpful. So anyway, what are you going to do in Canvas, or what are you going to do in an online class? You've got login dates and times that you can see in Canvas. Again, though, some of the beauty of the online is that they don't have to be at class at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, unless, of course, you've scheduled like a synchronous discussion. That they do need to show up for, just as they would for a regular class. But they do need to show up. They do need to participate, and you are going to have to be able to track that. So as you think about attendance, you'll think about it differently in some cases. You'll think about exactly the way you do for the appointments that are scheduled, but then you're going to have some flexibility with looking for their presence and looking for their participation. Then we also have like the observations. Every day you watch those kids and you notice, like, how do people look? And, you know, sometimes you'll see kids whose like head is on the desk, and you make all these observations about their behavior that are very significant for understanding them, for knowing their needs, for meeting them, for helping them learn. You're going to have ways to do that in Canvas. And again, there's all, you know, the video content, their written content, the summaries, how they appear in the Skype conversations. So you're going to want to continually be thinking about how can you know them, understand what they're up to. And again, we go on here, and you can go back. This presentation is in Canvas. It's in this session module, and actually this presentation is in there, so the whole Google presentation is in there. And then what I did was find all of the Canvas guides that talk about analytics, so there are links to all of them in that one module, so you can easily find them and read them. And the Canvas guides are pretty short and fast. You're probably already getting to know them, and they will help you understand like exactly how to find what you're looking for. I do have to say though, they're really helpful for like, where do I find the analytics? What do they consist of? They do very little in terms of talking about how do I make meaning of this information. And so that's where this presentation and then your excellent work are going to help us really do interesting things with analytics. All right, moving on. Why are they essential in an online class? And again, this is stuff we've started to hammer on. The basics. You're going to take attendance, you're going to collect the assignments. And again, clearinghouse, everything's going to be in there. All the assignments will be in there, all be in one place. And actually, I think right after this is going to be the session on the gradebook and rubrics. And you're going to learn how to, like, just right when you get the assignments, you grade them, you'll push them straight into the gradebook. So you're going to have, it's like you have this beautiful filing cabinet, and you don't have 6 different folders. Well, you have it electronically, but it will be, there's this nice relationship between getting the assignments, grading them, and pushing that information into your gradebook. Observe students, provide feedback to students, and to differentiate. And this is actually a point, we're going to talk about this a little bit. I think that there's what are called course analytics and student analytics, and in a moment I'll say more. But with the student analytics, they don't have access to that, only you do. But I think you've got an incredible opportunity to give kids feedback using the analytics. So you could do it with all the kids, but you could particularly do it with kids where you're noticing that they're not showing up. You can take screenshots of their reports and give them to the kids and use them as a place to ask them to do self-assessment, and then have conversations with them. And just, you just show them the data and say, let's look at this together. What do you think it means? So that's where that you can use them as a form of feedback to the kids. And then also, as you look at them, you'll start differentiating things, understanding what these kids are up to and how you need to move them forward. Also, data is particularly useful, and you do this all the time. You give a test, you grade it, and you look at what do they know, what don't they know, and when you see gaps in what you hope they had known, you then get responsive in terms of what you do next. You might need to reteach, you might need to reinforce things. There's some of that will go on, with Canvas analytics as well. So analytics enable you to understand, manage, and lead your students. All right. So what Canvas provides, this is like the total macro view. They have what they call course analytics, and they have what they call student analytics. And I'd like to just sort of differentiate the two. I'm going to get into more specifics about exactly what they consist of. But when I started to really put a little pressure on these in terms of like, what are they? How would I use these to get meaningful information? To me, the course analytics are data snapshots. They're these sort of static pictures of how many page views were there on this particular day. And it's interesting, like you peek at it. I sort of think you take peeks at the course analytics to like get a quick pulse. And you'll see 57 page views on May 2nd. It doesn't tell you who was there, and it doesn't tell you what they looked at, but you see a kind of activity. I think it's interesting just to see, was anyone around? But they could all look at the page and not look at the page. You know what I mean? And I actually think you need to be transparent with the kids from the beginning about the analytics. And again, not like, hey, we got a surveillance system, but rather, I need to know you. I want to, make this class work for you. I want you to have your best experience. And just as your teachers, know you and lead you and reflect on your behavior, I'm going to do that too. And analytics are how we do that. So I think the kids need to know about this data. Also, once they know, these kids are smart. And you can imagine some of them will go in and kind of click around and generate data for you that's pretty meaningless in terms of whether they did anything. So I think that's why I think of it, it's like a snapshot that you can't tell a whole lot about. Other than that, people were around. And you'll see that you can get page views, you can get participation, you can get these sort of macro snapshots. But in terms of what the kids did and whether they understood anything, that's not going to come out of this data. The student analytics, I actually started to think about as data catalysts, because the student analytics show where they've participated. So they both they reflect action. Either the kids took action and they generated data, or wait, I'm blocking on how I was thinking about this. Or you can use them to encourage action. So you can set the kids up with things they have to do, and it will generate data, or it will reflect actions that they actually took. So it actually serves as a kind of catalyst, and that's, I think, where you will get the really meaningful data about people doing things. But again, even with this, until you look at what they actually did, like it will generate data that shows they participated in a discussion, but until you look at how they participated, you won't really know how meaningful their work was. Does that make sense to people? Okay. All right, so here is the picture of what you see when you go into the course analytics. This is actually, I took this out of our Big History sandbooks. Big History is a class that we're doing with 3 different schools, and I just wanted to, we don't have a lot of data right now because you all haven't generated it yet. We did have the data from the teacher training, and I think I might have a couple little examples from that, but I also sort of felt like, I don't know if I want to put up all the data that you all generated. I do show, I think I do have a couple snapshots, but I only showed positive stuff. Only showed like our high flyers in the teacher training course. So anyway, but, and you all didn't get any grades. And so again, it wasn't like a comprehensive data portrait, but this is from Big History. So you can see you get activity, and you get assignments, and you get grades. And you can see they get into like different colors that will show you things. And there's actually nothing in the grades. But the grades will show you sort of the spread of the grades and the median on the grades. So that's the big picture of the course analytics. And then, just to show you, this is the activity. And take a look at this for a moment. And then I'll ask you, what do the page views tell you? And what do the actions tell you? It's pretty straightforward.
Everybody got excited the first couple of days.
Yes.
And then things tapered off a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there was something due on the 12th.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? I love this. This is exactly the kind of thing you want to do. So, and again, I can't, if we were in the system, I could hover over any of these and it would pop up how many people participated, how many views there were, so you'll get those numbers. And once I get to the student ones that you'll see, you can generate like 108 page views. It would actually be the blue here. Then you go into the student analytics and you start to see, like, there's one kid who looked at it 57 times, and then there's someone who didn't look at, so it's really, you just have to be careful. But I do think if you want to, like, take a peek at your class, just flash in and look at this, it will very quickly say people are active. I mean, you want to see activity. Like, you put an assignment up and you tell those kids, you got to look at it on Thursday, and you're going to, shoot something into the discussion forum the next day. You could peek fast at this to see if you've got activity. But again, you will have some folks who will generate a lot of data for you and others who aren't doing anything, so you need to kind of drill down on it. Does that make sense? Anyone want to add anything else? Do you have any other thoughts about? Yeah? So orange is participation and blue is page views. And I think they shift up as the activity happens.
But orange is a page view too, right? And you have to do a page view in order
Exactly,
to
exactly,
take action.
exactly. And you know what's interesting to me too is when I started looking at like the teacher training course data, you will see like the front page has a ridiculous number of page views. Well, everyone is using it as like the doorway to other things. So you quickly see that everyone sort of starts at the home page and then shoots out to other stuff. So, you know, you're basically seeing the pathway they took in, and it's not terribly meaningful, you know. So anyway, this is one of my big data ideas, and this is intimately linked to the student analytics and the whole idea about action and things inspiring action. Meaningful data, I think, comes from action. You want to move the students from viewing to doing. It is when they do things like participate in discussion, submit an assignment, that you will have activity happening, and you will see that the kids aren't just like meaninglessly clicking around, or maybe clicking around and reading and so forth. But we think meaningful learning comes from action. So regardless of Canvas, regardless of analytics, I have found as a teacher that when I push kids to do things, read this poem and respond to these two questions with a paragraph of writing, that's where, when I had moments, if you assign a sonnet to a group of 9th grade boys, I taught in an all-boys school for years, if I just said, read this sonnet and come in tomorrow and we'll talk about it, they would take, I'm telling you, 10 seconds maybe to read 14 lines of poetry. So knowing the behavior, and frankly, some of it was strategic. They had a ton of stuff to do. They had a ton of homework. They had sports. They had all this stuff. So we decided to make it harder for them. No, we decided to actually increase the possibility that they would understand something by saying, you have to answer these two questions in a written response. And we actually collected it all and graded it, which was, I'm telling you, a big project. But it guided them. It made them read with a purpose. It made them struggle to make some meaning of a difficult, let's say, Shakespeare sonnet. So we believe that meaningful learning comes from action, whether you're explaining and summarizing, interpreting, applying, participating in some kind of a forum. That, I think, will increase the likelihood that they understand things. It's also going to generate data that I think is going to have more significance for you than something like a page view. So I guess it's a big push to say, have them do stuff. It's going to increase what they understand, but it's also going to let you see what's going on. It's going to give you artifacts that you can look at and really gauge whether they understand anything. So now, here we are. These are your people. And you can see actually two of our, are there more? Let's see who else is in here. Yep, there's several people who are in here that had a nice showing in the, yes. And this doesn't mean I just cut it off. It doesn't mean that, I mean, they are ranked actually by paid. You can use this button to like rank them in different orders. I could have flipped it and we would have seen something else, but again, I didn't because I'm trying to be encouraging. But so here's the overview of student analytics. And it's very easy to find all this stuff in Canvas, so don't even worry about that. That will be the least. Getting to the data is easy. Using it is where the interesting stuff happens. But here's what you get in this overview of what students are up to. So your students will all be here. You'll see the page views. You'll see the participations. The assignments, there's a whole color coding for like, was it turned in on time? Was it late? Is it missing? You can imagine red is missing, but this is misleading because there was more flexibility with deadlines. But Canvas, again, it's a computer, it's a system. It can only understand things in narrow ways. There's no subtlety. So this is misleading, and you'll get to know all that. But anyway, so this is what you can see with students, and you can see their grades will show up too. So this again is a useful, like, I want to just look at, what's going on here and how are things, and you will quickly be able to identify people who are not alive in your class, and then you'll be responsive to that. But also, and again, when you hover over these, you get numbers, and even though we can see who are who had the most page views, when you hover over the numbers, there's sometimes it looks like, oh, she's got, it's not always so many. I mean, it's, it breaks down according to what the grand total is. All right, so, and there, I'm sorry, I hope I'm not embarrassing you, but I decided I will go with our most participatory person. So, and I was thinking I would give you a prize, but I forgot to bring a prize. Yes. So, but this is our data superstar from the teacher training course. And this is what you'll look at once you click onto the student. And this is actually the kind of report that I thought would be really useful for you. Just take a screenshot and email it to your student and say, and give them some guidance, but again, real neutral. Like, don't tell them what you think it means, although you are thinking, whatever you think, but let them have a chance to look at it. It's a kind of report, And so you get activity, so we can see when Atsuko was participating in the class, and when she looked at stuff and what page view she looked at, and then we see communication. And I know that there's a whole internal email system within Canvas. And I actually remember, I think you and we've had some nice email exchanges. So I was like, oh, there, we're talking there.
The teacher emailed her many more times than she emailed the teacher.
I had a lot to tell her, okay? I was trying to be helpful.
How poorly she was doing.
No. She and our discussions were very highbrow about how do you, it was all the mechanics of Canvas that we discussed. Yes. So anyway, but then I think part of it was I'd be like, oh, I got to tell her one more thing. So I would, So, and then down here you get the assignments, and fortunately, I think it's just getting cut off in a certain way because it was a screenshot. But you'll see there's a whole code system for the assignments, turned in on time, when they were turned in, and all of that. Okay, so I'm going to tell you, I think we have one more shot that's going to help you. Oh, this is what's called the Student Access Report. So this is basically, when was the student accessing Canvas? And this gets, again, we keep talking about you, but I hope this is very complimentary because you did a great job. So here we can see where she was in the system, okay? And again, when I saw this, I'm like, boy, she liked the front page. Then I was like, that's where she was moving into the system, so she would start on the front page and move into, so you see sort of the patterns of access going on there. So, but, and this must be a similar kind of thing where she would start at the course topics and move out from there. So again, you're the smart one. This is just data. You're going to make sense of it, and you're going to do the interesting things with it. So again, we can see when she was last there, where she's been. If participation happened, she'd have stuff there. So it's really, this gets much more comprehensive about where people have been in the system and whether or not they participated. So that's super helpful. I think it's gonna really reveal things to you. But again, you have to go into an individual student to start getting the data on this kind of level of specificity. Does that make sense? Okay, so here's what I have come up with in terms of the information triangle. After I spent all this time looking at these analytics and really trying to think of what's meaningful and what's not, and how can they use this to understand these kids who you're not going to see every day. You're going to see them in a different way. You're absolutely going to see them, you're going to be with them, you're going to know them, but you're going to use different ways to do that. But as I thought about it, here's what the analytics offer, and here's what you're going to gather from other sources. How can that all come together to really create a comprehensive portrait of who these kids are, what their strengths are, what their needs are, and how you can respond to that, how you can be responsive. I think that's the big thing with data, is you want to be responsive. I came up with this. So here you have the analytics. That's what we've just talked about. You have this information about a student. Here you have what I call artifacts. So artifacts to me are the work, the written reply in the discussion forum, the assignment they submitted, the quick quiz you've given. So these are the artifacts, the student work that you'll have. Then over here, I put student input. This is your getting information from the kid about what he or she is up to. And also, GOA, you will do 2 student surveys in the course of your class. So you will have a set formal survey that you do through SurveyMonkey, and you'll get all this information from the kids halfway, I think it's halfway through and then toward the end. So the combination of the analytics from Canvas, the student work, the artifacts, and the input that you can get from the kids, whether it's a conversation with someone who didn't turn in an assignment or it didn't go well, or whether it's from kind of a higher level student survey, to me that's the triangle that together will let you really understand these kids and think about them and think about where you want to target your attention for helping them do well. Does that make sense to everybody? And I think, frankly, this is what you do every single day. And now you're going to have access to all this data that's going to come out of Canvas. And frankly, many of your schools have learning management systems, and I don't know whether you're trying to use the analytics or not, but you might be. And you might want to, especially if you're starting to flip things in your classroom and you're giving the kids stuff that they need to do at home using the system to watch videos or to participate in a discussion, then I think you'd want to use the analytics. This is actually one of our classes. It's 9/11. And this is Ben Temple, who teaches at the Blake School. And this is his homepage. All of you have the exact same thing. We have taken the classes live, but all the kids have right now is the homepage with your introductory videos, most of which I've watched and I loved. And I'm sure that the kids who've watched them, we're going to find out in a minute, who watched them, liked as well. Could you get into Canvas and go to your course and go to the homepage for your course? Because we are going to give you a chance to see what's in there.
So here you've got the next steps. So I encourage you to use them as you make plans for taking advantage of the analytics and working with your students and truly, exploiting them as a great source of information. And of course, we're always eager to talk with you about any questions you have about analytics or anything.